Hi everybody, Patrick here from EngineeringShock.com and ElectronicLessons.com. This video is a long time coming. This is the bugger. This is the pranking device that you place in an inconspicuous area, preferably in a cubicle. I've placed them in many different areas. I've made so far the fart bugger and the sex bugger. Sex bugger makes 6 random sex noises in different timing increments, so it's very random and very hard to detect. You can shorten the leads to the speaker by just shortening the wire at your end. Same with the 9-volt adapter. It will not come with a 9-volt battery, but it does come. I will be selling these assembled and in kit form. This video will show off how to use it, but first I'm going to show you how to put one together. This is what comes with the kit: a programmed audio chip and all the circuitry needed for the remainder of the assembly. So let me show you what comes with the kit. Okay, so you've got your quarter-watt speaker, 9-volt connector, a 78 LO5 5-volt regulator, a 160 k ohm resistor, 2 0.1 microfarad ceramic capacitors, a 2-pin header, a 10 microfarad electrolytic capacitor, and a 1 microfarad electrolytic capacitor. As well, you've got your program microcontroller, and on the other side you've got your socket, and you've got your programmed audio chip and socket on the other side. So first of all, let's solder in the resistor, the 160 k ohm resistor right here, and the 2 ceramic capacitors. The ceramic capacitors go in the C1 slot, labeled C1 0.1U for 0.1 micro, and the C4 slot right here, labeled C4 0.1 micro. The resistor goes in the OSC slot right here, labeled OSC. Now, one thing to note, actually 2 things to note. When you're soldering in the resistor, make sure that your solder joints are precise, that you're not shorting to where the IC leads here. You want to be very careful there's no shorting. As well, there's one thing about this board that's very particular, and you have to be very, very, very careful when you're soldering. There is a 1 microfarad electrolytic capacitor supposed to go here, right above the C4 0.1 microfarad ceramic capacitor. Now, the 2 leads that meet right in the middle are very, very, very close to one another. So before you start soldering the lead in, you want to bend it out towards the outside the board, because you got to be very, very careful before you power it up the first time that you know that the 2 middle leads meeting on those 2 capacitors are not touching each other. So before you solder, just make sure that the lead from the bottom is pulled in the opposite direction before you solder, and then cut the lead. Shouldn't be very difficult to do, but I just wanted to stress the point when you're assembling this. You need to have a nice precision soldering iron. So let's solder the ceramics and the resistor into place. The ceramic capacitors do not have any polarization, so you shouldn't have any issue. You can place them in either way. Next, we'll do the electrolytics and the header. I realize that the lighting in here is not nominal, and I'm sorry for that. It's also a very tiny board. I tried to make sure that when I designed it that I put everything together really, really close by to make it as small as possible. Now, the 2-pin header goes on this side of the board, labeled SPK. Solder that into place, and that's going to be where we plug in our little speaker. On the left side of the board, right here, labeled C2, there is a spot for a 10 microfarad electrolytic capacitor. It's labeled C2 10U for 10 micro. Now, if you have both of the capacitors look similar in size, so you have to make sure that you actually read the values, because it'll say 10U or 1U on the capacitor. You just need some good eyes. Anyway, there's a long lead and a short lead. In the case of C2, if you look really, really closely on the board, there's a little plus sign on the lower pin from this perspective. So that means you want your positive pin on the outside, and your short pin on the inside. So long pin on the outside, short pin on the inside. For your 1 microfarad, you're going to place it in the C3 slot. Now, in the case of the C3 slot, the positive pin has a little tiny plus sign on the inside, and your negative lead is on the outside, so facing this side of the board. So positive on the inside, negative on the outside. Long lead on the inside, short lead on the outside. Now, when you're, again, because the leads on the inside are so close together, you want to make sure that you don't leave those two leads in the middle shorted. So solder those into place, and we'll do our 7805 and our sockets. I realized that the last shot was not very good, so I've tried to make a difference here. Hopefully you can see this a little bit better. The 78L05 has a curved side and a flat side with writing on it. Now you'll notice that the footprint labeled IC3 has a curved side and a flat side. You want to make sure that from a bird's eye view, the curved side of the 7805 matches the curved side on the footprint, and then the flat side with writing on it matches the flat side on the footprint right behind the capacitor. Now the sockets. From this perspective, you'll notice that on the footprints for the two sockets, the 8-pin socket, there is a notch on the left-hand side, and on the 16-pin footprint, there is a notch on the left-hand side. I'm hoping that you can see that, because on the sockets themselves and on the ICs, there is a notch on the left-hand side. Make sure that from a bird's eye view, you line those up, because when you place your chips in, you want to make sure that the notches on the chips are matching the notch on the footprint. If you turn those around, you'll fry both of them. So make sure that there's a notch on the ICs on the left-hand side, notch on the sockets, and notch on each side of the footprint on the board on the left-hand side. Line them up, solder in your sockets. Make sure that there are no shorts, and that goes for everything, but use a fine-tip soldering iron. Make sure that's the same goes for the 7805. Then gently plug in your ICs into the sockets, and then we will do our 9-volt connector, and we'll plug in our speaker. Because the leads are so small, it's very difficult to see even if I had a fantastic camera. There are two pins here close to the 78L05 labeled G and D on the left for ground, and V+. V+ is your positive input pin. So I've got my 9-volt connector right here, and I want to connect the red wire to the V+ line on the right, and my black wire ground to the G and D wire on the left, or G and D pin on the left. Solder those into place. Now if you have a glue gun, it's really helpful to add a little bit of hot glue to those leads afterwards, because if you jiggle the wires back and forth, eventually they will break. So a little bit of hot glue never hurt anybody. On the top side, what you can do is you can take your speaker, and it plugs right onto those two leads. It's detachable. So solder those two power wires, remember, red to V+ and black to G and D, ground, and plug in your speaker, and then let's test it. Okay, so if you have a 9-volt battery handy, make sure it's charged, and plug it in. This is just a demonstration. 30 seconds after power up, this is your test. 30 seconds after power up, we should hear the first fart sound. There's 6 fart sounds, 6 sounds for the sex bugger. I'll be making other buggers too, but just listen. So that's one of the juicier sounds. There are 6 different sounds. If you want to hear all of the fart bugger sounds and all the sex bugger sounds, I'll put another demonstration video up, because I have another board that actually cycles through the sounds. Now, how this works is 30 seconds after first power up, there's the first fart sound. Then there's increments that range between 3 minutes and 17 minutes that are randomized, because there's 7 different timings, 6 different messages, so it never cycles the same per message. And what I did was in 2 different cases. I used this on 2 different colleagues. We ripped apart the cubicle wall so that we placed the speaker. We actually taped that to the inside felt of the cubicle wall, and placed the rest of the bugger in the cubicle wall as well. And the only reason he found it was because what we had done is we had cut the power wire and added wire extensions so that they could fit through the cubicle wall, so we could enable and disable it just by reconnecting the power wire. And the colleague that actually was doing the switching didn't put the wires back into the cubicle wall, and he was found out about 3 hours after we had initially planted it. Now, I'll be coming with different versions of this too that are much smaller, but the little speaker here offers surprisingly good noise or sound quality for what it is. And the sounds are all subtle and short, so it'll be very, very difficult to find where it is. You have to be very clever in where you hide them. Now remember, place some hot glue on the wire leads just to make sure that you don't break those wires. A little bit of hot glue goes a long way. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be making the swear bugger and the belch bugger soon. The sex bugger and the fart bugger should be available in stores our stores by the end of the week. EngineeringShop.com and ElectronicLessons.com. Thanks, guys.